This is Glenn Stewart, and I'm here today speaking with Aaron Ashley, another Gulf War veteran. And I have a couple of questions to ask Aaron concerning his experience with Gulf War Illness. Hey, Aaron, how are you doing?
Pretty good so far today.
So, Aaron, can you give us a little bit of a background on, what unit you were with, who'd you deploy with, and the time frames you were over there?
Yeah, no, my memory isn't as good as it used to be. I tend to forget a lot of things that happened in the past. So, um, we came from Luke Air Force Base. We arrived in country, I believe it was the 27th of August of 1990. Luke Air Force Base is the 58th Tactical Air Fighter Wing, and from Arizona. Um, we got to Daharan Air Base on the 27th of August. We were basically a troop support, and my MOS was a subsistence operations specialist. And what that involved was we ran two huge warehouses of non-perishable foods that we used to either send out on aircraft pallets or put on Navy ships. Any of your MREs or any type of dehydrated foods that were flown to either other Army bases, Air Force bases, or naval ships. We were at Daharan Air Base, but we mainly worked out of Daman Port.
Now, in the Gulf War, sorry about that. In the Gulf War, what can you tell us about your experience over there? Did you see any of the oil well fires? Were you forced to take the PB pills and Cypro? Did you hear the M8 alarms going off? Kind of give us your story about what you experienced.
Yes, sir. We were forced to take the pills. I know before we had left Luke Air Force Base, we had to take some pills, and we had to take a shot. One shot in particular caused me to have tremendous headaches. Now, at the time, they weren't telling us what these shots were or anything, and I didn't really think much about it. When we got in country, we had to line up and go through a tent to take another shot. We were also told to take these pills, and we were also given the package of pills that you had to push out the back in order to take the pills. The instructions on them were pretty vague, though. They weren't too clear. Some of us were taking them, once every 2 or 3 hours, and then they switched it to where their commander would come over the loudspeaker and tell us, okay, now it's time to take the pills. So some people were on, maybe their second or third pack before the orders finally got clear as to when we were actually supposed to take them. I did have one incident where I had to go through the line to get the shot, and I informed them the first time I had received the shot out the base that I came from, it caused me tremendous headaches, and they told me, well, this would be a different shot, not to worry about it. I did take that shot. I got sick. I got the headaches again. I did go. They did take me to a base hospital to get checked out. They told me the headaches would subside and everything would be okay. And after about, I believe, a day or two, it was okay. I was able to go back and start working from there. And I kept taking the pills as ordered. I wanted to question it, but at the same time, this was all new to me. I had just entered the military in 1989, and of course, it started in 1990, so I wasn't even in a year yet. So I just did what I was told to do. But we were forced to take shots and take pills, which I had no idea what they were or what they could do.
Okay, sorry about that. You kind of coming in a little broken there. One question I have, while you were over there, did you start to exhibit any kind of health problems, like diarrhea, muscle joint pain, etc.?
Actually, no. Other than the headaches that I got and the throwing up, those were the two major things. And I didn't know if it was the medication because it happened pretty. I mean, after I had the shot, it had to be an hour later I was throwing up. So and the headaches had started pretty fast too. But other than those two things, I was doing pretty well over there. No other real, major problems at that time. No, that was it.
Now, once you came back stateside, did you start to develop any kind of health issues?
Well, yeah, some, but I mean, in the Air Force, we had a program that was called the Fat Boy program, and all it required you to do is if you could run a mile and a half within 15 minutes, you didn't have to be on the program. Most people walked it because that's how simple it was to do it, so it was no big deal. But in 2002, I believe it was, maybe 2003, they changed it to where they wanted you to ride a bike. And I never passed that test. I could never keep up enough air going through me to pass that test. Now, by the way, at the time I was 6'2" and only weighed 180 pounds, soaking wet. I was skin and bones. Very athletic. Loved to play basketball, football, loved volleyball. Just never really had any problems. But for the life of me, I could never figure out why I couldn't pass that test. So when they said, "Well, you have to go on a program," they were like, "I don't know what exactly we're going to do because your skin and bones now," they just could never figure out why I could never pass that test. I was constantly, out of breath. That was the first sign I had while I was in the military a couple of years later that something was going on.
Okay, hold on. We're going to pause just a moment. You kind of came broken in the last part there.
Okay.
Go ahead. You can try to repeat that last portion.
Okay. And around 2002, 2003, the Air Force had a program called the Fat Boy program. It was a fitness program to where if you could not do a mile and a half in 15 minutes, then you would have to join the program. I had no problem with that because you could normally walk it. It was pretty simple. But then they switched it to where you had to do a bicycle test, and I could never pass the bicycle test because I could never get enough oxygen to do the bicycle test. I would try it. I must have tried it the first time 3 or 4 times, and I failed it every time. So, there was a problem with that. They wanted to put me on the program, but since I was only 6'2" and weighed 180 pounds, soaking wet, they couldn't put me in there. I was skin and bones already. So I think that was the first sign that maybe something was going on.
Okay. Now, once you got out, did you start developing health problems? Did you start having issues with your digestive system, memory loss, muscle and joint pain, any kind of, all the presumptives related to Gulf War illness?
Yeah. In 2004 is about when it started. I got out in 1998. I worked out 3 to 4 times a week. I was 6'2", up to 220, 225 pounds. I used to jog. Was in spectacular shape. Loved to lift weights. About 2004 is when things really started, to get a little scary. I started developing a small minor tremor in my left arm that I didn't know where it started from, but it was minor, so I didn't really worry about it too much. The migraines had always been there from the time that I was in, just going through. They were just getting a little bit worse than when they first started. And I know it's harder for a migraine to get worse, but they were coming more regular instead of further apart. They were coming a lot more closer together. I started not being able to lift the weights, 3 to 4 times a week. It went to maybe 3 times, then 2 times, and 1. I started putting on weight, but it was because my muscles weren't recuperating as fast as I was used to them recuperating. And I understand you can get a little older, but mine would just be so sore. Along with the tremors, that made me think, okay, something's going on. I would still go to work. I would do what I needed to do, but that kind of bothered me. Then in 2005, I had to go to the hospital because I had this terrible pain on the right side of my stomach, in my abdomen area. And I mean, it was so bad that I had to go to the hospital. And I was in there for 2 or 3 days with them trying to figure out exactly what was going on. And they never came up with a conclusion. After 2 or 3 days, the pain subsided. I went back to work thinking everything was okay. Then I started just getting really fatigued. I would be at work and it would just be 11 o'clock, and I'm like, man, I feel like I've been, working a whole day already, and it's just 11 o'clock. I hadn't really really got started. So then that's when I started going to doctors to try to figure out, okay, maybe there's something going on. And I wasn't going to the VA because at that time I hadn't heard about the VA or been to the VA or done anything with the VA. Once I exited the military, I was pretty much done with it. I thought I would never have a need to come back. So then that's when I started just going to, my primary care physician, and he started, checking things out and trying to figure out what was going on.
Okay, so like in my case, I went through many years not even knowing what was happening to me, why I was getting so sick. None of the doctors were giving me answers. When did you realize that you were actually coming down with a case of Gulf War illness?
Well, it's funny because I had never even heard of the term Gulf War illness before. I happened to be at a doctor's office. They had me go to see a nerve doctor who was checking on my twitching and everything else, and he said, did you say you were in the military? And I told him yes, I was. And he asked me, what years did you serve? So I told him. He says, well, were you in the Gulf War, the first one? And I said, yeah, I was in the first Gulf War. He says, well, you have a lot of symptoms here, because by that time I had already been diagnosed with IBS. And he says, I'm looking at some of this stuff, and as a physician, he says, I don't know how much I can do for you because there's nothing really, no literature whatsoever for me to go off of from the military as to what we should be doing. He says, but this is what I printed off of the government website, and he says it's called, Gulf War syndrome. And I was like, Gulf War syndrome? And he said, yes. Yeah. So he gave me the sheet of paper. Then, I went home and I started reading up on all this stuff, and I'm listening to what other people are saying, and I'm like, wait a minute, most of these people have a majority of the same symptoms that I do. And that was the first time I had ever heard of it. So I started just reading everything I could find on it, seeing, hey, if there's a cure, if I could go to somebody and they're supposed to check me out and say, yeah, we can get you into this program to make you better, because I was pretty successful. I had a pretty good, well-paying job that I was happy with, but my health was just declining to a point where I knew I was not going to be able to hold that job for long. So I started checking out as much as I could, but I wasn't coming up with any answers. So that's when I decided, let me go and join the VA and see what they were going to be able to tell me.
Okay. So are you able to work right now?
No, I am on SSDI. I was awarded my SSDI in October of 2013. The judge said my case was pretty much an open and shut case. He didn't know why it took that long for me to be awarded it, but I guess there were some problems with my paperwork. But he told me during the end of the case that, when I told him I had filed for my military disability, waited about 2.5 years and then was denied, and I told him I was just going to leave it alone. He told me, he says, you've served your country, you did everything that they asked you to do. He says, I hear everything that's going on with the VA now. Whatever you do, do not, give up your rights, give up what you've earned. So, I went back and refiled again. And a week later, I got his decision that I had been awarded my Social Security disability insurance. So I'm on SSDI right now. I had kidney cancer where I had to have my left kidney removed. I had rhabdomyolysis on the right kidney. I've been tested for multiple sclerosis, stiff person syndrome, just about every test you can think of as to why they're trying to figure out. Yes, why I have the tremors, why in the arms and the legs. I have muscle weakness, but it's only on the left side of my body. They thought I had a stroke. No, results came back negative on the stroke. And they were just, I've had a mitochondria, I've had several tests done where they're coming back and saying we can't find out what it is. So they know that there's something with the muscles because they can see the tremors on the machine that they hooked me up to. They just can't figure out why it's happening. So.
Okay. Now, have you submitted claims with VA on the presumptives of Gulf War illness? Such as fibromyalgia, IBS. I can't recall the other ones right offhand, but have you submitted those, and where do they stand right now?
I did submit for several of them. Presumptum was definitely my irritable bowel syndrome, and I was turned down for that. They said there was no diagnosis by a medical professor, even though professional, even though I had the documentation that stated I was diagnosed with IBS by my primary care provider, that he got from my gastrointestinal doctor. So I don't know exactly, what was going on there, but I do have the documentation for it. And again, after waiting 2.5 years and being denied for everything that I filed for, I just decided I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to mess with it again. But then after winning my Social Security and hearing what that judge had to tell me, I did refile again in February of this year, February of 2014. I did refile.
Okay, so your claims are currently still your claims are submitted and are currently still pending approval.
Yes, they are.
Okay. I'm trying to think offhand. My brain's kind of fogging out on me right now. A question I have for you. You talk about muscle twitching. I started to go through that where I get muscle twitching. It started off with my left eye, but eventually worked out, it went down throughout my entire body. It's mostly focused on the left side, but I get these twitchings out of the blue for no absolute reason, where it just continuously twitches, and there's nothing you could do about it. It just, you just have to wait it out. Is that what you're experiencing?
Yeah, the exact same thing. I mean, I'm on gabapentin, but it really, I take probably, I believe it's 16 pills, 4 pills 3 times a day, so 12 pills. But there's really nothing you can do about it. In my particular case, my doctor was really confused because I get a majority of them on the left side of my head. You can actually put your hand up on there and you'll feel it just twitching on days when it's really bad. And he was just, they did an MRI, not an fMRI, just a regular MRI, and they found the little small 3 millimeter something, but they said it could have been a blood clot that had popped. Unfortunately, I was not injured or anything like that, but I always thought blood clot kill you if you get them. But
Okay.
he says that's not what it was. So, but they couldn't find anything. Looking at the X-ray that they had, but on the left side, my wife thinks it's gross. That I can, that she can put my hand on there and just feel it twitching through my head. As far as the arms and legs go, again, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's there every day. I haven't found absolutely anything that'll work. There are some days when it's there, it's just not as much as it is on a normal day. I've looked at other people's videos on YouTube that they have of their legs and arms twitching, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not alone. So, I mean, I've been tested for cognitive issues as well, because I went to the Cleveland Clinic and they tested me for my memory because it was just terrible. I mean, just driving to an appointment, forgetting where I was supposed to go and ending up somewhere, and calling my wife and going, hey, where was I supposed to be going to? Because I literally forgot where I'm going to and was just driving to, having a conversation and asking the same question over and over again. Most of the time I carry a notebook with me so I can kind of check off what I want to say, or if I said this already or not, because I'm not exactly too sure. So, I mean, my wife is my backbone. She covers all that stuff for me, and she'll let me know as far as my pill-wise goes, when to take my pills and everything else. So.
Yeah, and that's something I've had to do too, because of the memory issue and the cognitive issue. I have 2 whiteboards in my house. Every time I think about something, it doesn't matter what it might be, whether I need to go to the store and get a loaf of bread. I have to write it down on the whiteboard, and then what I'll do is, as I'm leaving out, you would think that, okay, loaf of bread, that's all you're getting, nothing else. You're not doing anything else. However, by the time that I close the door and lock it, just like that, all of a sudden I'm thinking like, well, I was going to the store. What am I getting? So what I'm having to actually do is I jot these things down, so the to-dos, the buy, what to buy, and grocery list, and the whole 9 yards. I write it down on a whiteboard, and then I go over there and, with my smartphone, I'll take a picture of it. That way, you know, by the time I get to the grocery store, it's like, okay, well, what are we getting? There it is.
Yes, yes, that's how it is. And unfortunately, a lot of our vets are, having to deal with this problem. And sometimes people look at you kind of weird. They go, "Didn't you like just ask that?" And I normally apologize for it, but I never use that as an excuse or go, "Hey, I got this or I got that." I just normally apologize from it and move on. But you know, it's I don't know how to say this without it sounding bad. When you hear of other Gulf War veterans that have the same problems that you do, it makes you feel better because you know you're not alone. You know, wait a minute, this is not something being made up. And the fact that there was no literature out there or no notification to Gulf War veterans that, hey, there might have been something going on while you were there, so you might need to come in and get a checkup or anything, way back then when I had never even heard of it. So that's kind of disturbing. But at the same time, now that I'm um, now that I'm aware of it, it's I try to read anything I can on it and try to stay up to date as much as possible. I
Yeah.
take pills and I'm during the day. A lot of the times I'm either out of it or I'm dozing off or something else. So
Okay. Now, and talking about the memory, I'm going to give you an example of memory loss, cognitive dysfunction. Um, I've had two circumstances, two instances. I was working at the time. The first time this ever happened to me, it freaked me out. It was later in the afternoon. I was getting off work, and here I am with my laptop shoulder bag over, over my shoulder, going to my car, and I get into the car, and I knew it was, you know, the workday was over with, and I knew it was time for me to go home. And here's the thing: you to explain this to some people, and they look at you like you're crazy. I knew exactly where I lived. Back then I was living in an apartment. I knew what my apartment looked like. I knew what the refrigerator color was. I knew I was on the second floor. I knew what the building looked like. I even knew where the pool was. However, when I got in the car and I was getting ready to go home, all of a sudden it was like somebody took the road map to go home and erased it. And it took me about 10, I would say about 10 to 15 minutes. I sat there in the car and I was borderline freaking out because I was thinking, I'm going to have to call my son to come pick me up. And I'm going to sound like an idiot when I call my son, hey, can you pick me up and take me home? And then try not to go into too much detail as towards why, you know. But after about 10 to 15 minutes, all of a sudden, boom, the roadmap, it became clear. Another instance of that was, I remember one time, the family was all together in the living room. We were having some kind of cookout and so on, and everything was normal except I couldn't remember my son's name. This is my son. I could remember his girlfriend's name. I can remember, their her son's name. I knew exactly who he was, and I could even recall many of the history. I could recall the times going four-wheeling with him, going fishing. I remember exactly what his bedroom looked like, but all of a sudden it was like, I'm looking at him and we're trying to hold a conversation, and it's like, okay, what do I do? I'm not going to sit on like, hey, you. But but then later on during the day, all of a sudden they click. Now that's not normal.
Right, right. I understand what you're saying. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they love to play video games, and I'll try whenever I get the chance to play with them. And we'll be playing a game, and I'll just forget what buttons are supposed to do what, and I'll look at my wife and go, how do you punch again, or how do you block? And it's a sad thing to see your kids looking at you like you don't remember how to block, and I go, well, if you give me a minute, I'm pretty sure I will again. Just keep playing, and then it'll come back in pieces. But when I went to go take my evaluation test, it was an all-day test. It was 8 hours. I had to break mine up into 2 days because of the chronic fatigue. I would just get tired. We would start at 8, and by 11:30 at the latest,
Although,
it would. You're not getting anything else out of me. Yeah, I'm done. There was nothing else to do. He would see me winding down. He would like, the expression on your face is changing. Your words are starting to slur. And he was like, I hope they figure this out. He's like, it actually looks like you're kind of having a stroke right now. The way you're slurring your words. I go, no, I'm just getting so tired, and he was like, oh, wow. So I had to go back the next day to do the second half of it. And he was like, yeah, you should keep getting checked out. And I'm telling him, look, I'm going to every test that people are saying, look, we can set you up with a test. I'm going and I'm getting it done. But when they come back and tell me, until the government releases what exactly you guys were exposed to, we're all just taking, a stab in the dark. It's a needle in the haystack. We don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
So
that's something.
The saddest part about it is my 9-year-old came to me last year, late last year, and he says, hey, Dad, I want to show you something. I'm like, what is it? He pulls up, he has on these shorts, and he says, look at my leg, and I'm looking at it. I mean, his leg is twitching like there is no tomorrow. I mean, it is twitching, and really fast. And I'm just looking at that, and he's like, isn't that cool? And I'm like, how are you doing that? He says, I'm not doing it. He says, it does it all the time. And I'm just looking at it, and he's going, yeah. I said, does it do it anywhere else? He says, yeah, sometimes it'll do it on my arms, but the majority of it is my legs or my thighs. And I'm just sitting there looking at it and thinking, oh, my God, we have nothing like this in our family history at all.
Yeah, see, that's something that I worry about. I hear about family members, even spouses, husbands, wives, children coming down with all kinds of health issues. And one of the things that worries me is about concerning, passing on a lot of this stuff to family members. I've been lucky where I did not have any kids after the Gulf War, and I'm glad, because I just, it's not your fault, because you consider the fact that you had no idea what the heck was wrong with you, but I'm just looking back, and what I know now, I always think like, whew, I'm glad I didn't conceive after that.
No, I mean, I love my little boys to death. I would never, say I would never want to have them. And I understand. I can see you being grateful, but I'm what you call a late bloomer. I didn't start till later on in life. And I mean, they do have some problems that we go to the hospital for, but it's like, come on, they have done nothing wrong to deserve this. And I don't believe I've done anything wrong either, but I signed a contract knowing that, whatever happens, I signed this contract willingly. They didn't. They weren't around during that time. So I'm just, praying that, this is something for them. It'll be minor and just pass. I doubt it, because I look at I look at him sometimes and I see his leg is just moving while he's watching TV or something, and I'm thinking, oh my God,
Yeah. Talking about the cognition issues, I remember, you talking about how you're playing a video game with your son and all that, and it reminds me of, I used to sit there playing video games. I had a PS2, and eventually I ended up getting a PS3 and all that stuff, and you know, typical guy stuff. We sit down there with all our little football video games and, you know, war games, Call of Duty and all that stuff. But because of um, my dysfunction, I mean, I wish I could play them, but I
Right.
can't do that because, you know, all the everything that's going on the screen is so confusing to me that I just get so frustrated that I
Hmm.
turned around and I gave my I this is a brand new PS3. I spent you know several $100s buying and including all the games along with it, and I give it away because I can't do it. You know,
Right.
and now I'm to the point where for entertainment, you know, if I go to the VA clinic and you know, in order to pass time, my game of choice is solitaire. That's about the only thing I can handle.
Keep it simple. I agree. Keep it simple. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I try to take like a Vita or a Nintendo, GameCube or something, maybe a crossword puzzle. I would do a book, but I just fade off so quick that I can't. I don't read nowhere near as much as I used to, but I can, buy the audio of the book and do it that way because reading I can't hold the book in my left hand because after about 3 or 4 minutes, my left hand is already tired or I'm so busy trying to remember what I just read. I'd be like, wait a minute, how did we even get to this point? And I got to go back, and read a section again because I just don't remember how I got to a certain point in a book. And my wife, she's real good, but when we're watching a TV show and I go, wait a minute, I didn't see that part. And my wife goes, yes, you did. You said this about it. And I was like, no, I didn't see that part. I know I didn't see that part. And now I just know not to even argue with her because when she, starts telling you, yeah, this is what you did, and it's really specific, there's no need to. The fact that I can't remember,
Yeah, I
you know,
go, yeah. Talking about reading, that's kind of funny because of the fact that, you know, I used to, in the past, you know, I used to read, I wouldn't say I was an avid reader, you know, bookworm, but reading is something that I don't even attempt it anymore because of the fact that if I try to sit down there reading the book, each paragraph, I will have to read each paragraph at least 5 times in order to comprehend what that paragraph is saying. And that's you know that is on a good day. On the days where you know I'm having cognitive issues, it's like I won't even try it. But I don't even do it anymore because it's so frustrating because you're having to fight so much just to be able to read that book that you turn around and you just throw it into the corner and say, "Oh, the heck with that."
yes, it gets frustrating. It does get frustrating. I mean, yeah, I agree 100%. Reading something and not knowing what you read or forgetting you even read it. I mean, yeah, definitely. That's why I like when I go places. I definitely want my wife to be with me because at least I can say that I already mentioned this, or ask her just to make sure that I'm not, trying to repeat the same thing over and over again. Looking at other people's, videos on YouTube and seeing what they're going through, it's disheartening that there's not more help available out there, but you know we just got to keep pushing forward. That's the message that I'm telling myself every day. Wake up, do what you need to do to survive this day, and worry about tomorrow when tomorrow gets here.
Yeah, and that's something else that I have witnessed. It was actually family members that brought that up to my attention. You know, I had being in the military, you know, we're accustomed to being precise, very detailed. You know, if I would tell my kids, hey, I need you to go out there and get this job, whether it's mowing the yard, etc., you know, you have that mentality of being very specific and detailed. But however, as they grew older, you know, my kids started telling me, like, Dad, you already told me that 2 or 3 times already. Okay, I got the message. you know, and I wouldn't even realize that I was doing that. You know, it was like, really? I was like, no, I didn't tell you that. And they're like, no, yes, you did. You just told me just a minute ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to think what. Um, I think we pretty much covered everything. I mean, is there anything else you would like to talk about?
No, actually, I'm I'm kind of struggling right now to stay awake here. So.
No, well, let's see, it's 1 o'clock. Yeah, it's getting close towards my nap time.
Yeah.
That's bad. You know, every day I have to take at least one nap in order to recharge the batteries.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true too.
Um, Thinking offhand if there's anything else. Really can't think of anything else. Um, One of the things I've asked other veterans, and I get these jolts of pain for absolutely no reason throughout my entire body. Most of the time, they tend to be focused on my shoulder area, my legs, or like the back area of the head. But it's the best way I can describe it is kind of like it's like being zapped by a cattle prod or something like that. I mean, it
Oh,
just hits you instantly.
and it's quick too.
It's just, like I told other veterans, I can be sitting down in my recline watching a movie, blah blah blah, and all of a sudden, just boom, it hits you, and it just like shoots right through your body so quick and so hard.
Hmm.
Um, I've had times where I've actually had to drop down to my knees and grab onto something because I had to wait it out. You get those too, I assume.
Yes, left and right legs, just the legs though, and to me it almost feels like somebody's pushing a pole, pushing a pole down through my leg, or a stroke of lightning that just hits you really quick. I mean, it drops me to the ground when it hits, and it doesn't happen like, on a consistent basis, but out of a month, I'd say maybe 3 times. And it is like I tell my wife, I would never wish that pain on my worst enemy. It is crazy. I had the first time I ever felt it, I thought, oh my God, am I dying? Because that thing shot through my leg, and I literally could have chewed my own leg off. That's how bad it hurt. I was like, whoa, and it was like it's a sharp pain. So the sharpness is what actually gets you, but it kind of lingers there, and it's like, oh my God. And that was the first time I ever had it. I said, oh, maybe this was just kind of a fluke thing. And then when it happened again, I said, oh no, please don't let this be something brand new. That's something that I just won't be able to take. And you know, unfortunately, I can't take only a certain amount of prescriptions due to my kidney situation. So I don't get much. I can't take many things for pain relief. So I gotta pretty much just try to suffer through it.
Yeah, yeah. Now, going back to the muscle issue, the neurological damage, one of the things I've experienced, we talked about the muscle twitching, we talked about the jolts of pain. What about, this is one thing I have experienced, is the fact that, um, I live on a two-floor house, and, my bedroom is on the bottom floor. Um, However, at times this has happened to me where I'm just walking just fine, no problems, like close to normal person, and then all of a sudden one of my legs will just decide, uh, out of the blue, completely just give out. I mean, I'm walking on both legs, and all of a sudden, one of my legs would just take and go, thoop. It just caves in on me.
Yes. Yes. I unfortunately had that happen to me the last time. Was about 3 weeks ago. I walked with the cane, and my right leg just went out, and to the ground I went. You know, now I'm 6'2" and weigh about 320. So I hit the ground pretty hard, and I had to go to the doctor, and they think I have a pinched nerve. So yeah, I mean, and he asked what happened. I said my right leg just, I never felt it hit the ground when I, you know, after I put my left leg down with the cane and walking with the cane, I never felt my right leg hit the ground. Just, whoop, and I was on the ground. You know, I said it happens every once in a while. I don't know where it comes from, but yeah, that one, that was nothing there. It was absolutely nothing. I hit the ground and I rolled over. My kids was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you guys are gonna have to help me up." And they couldn't help me up, so they had to run and get my wife, and she came out, you know, to help me get up. And then I was laying down on the couch later on that night, and I was like, "Look, I'm gonna have to go to the emergency room because this pain that's going through my hip and my back is just, it's crazy." So they went and got some X-rays and stuff like that, and they were like, "Well, how did you fall?" And I said, "No, I went to go plant my right leg, and I didn't feel my right leg hit the ground, so I just right on over."
Yeah, and I remember twice. The best way I can describe it is sometimes I can kind of gauge it may happen to me, because the best way I can describe it is it's kind of like a pressure building up. You feel like you feel a weird sensation along your leg, all right, and um, then I know when I feel that, and it doesn't happen all the time. You know, at times it just happens without even warning, right? But I already fell down the steps twice. You know, I took a tumble, my leg gave out, and I just went doo, 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 stumbling down the stairs. But what I do now is, if I'm going down the stairs, instead of facing forward, going down the stairs like a normal person, I'm actually having to reverse myself and go down backwards while holding the rail. So that way, if my leg does give out on me, I still have my arm to grasp the handrail and, you know, keep me from going all the way down.
Hmm. Yeah, there was no warning with mine. It just it just hit. Now I've had it other times where it went out, and there was no warning. Like I'll try to, you know, throw a frisbee with my two boys, you know, and I'll go to take a step, and I get that tingle in the leg, like a bunch of bees or something. You know, it's going around in there, and I was told, well, that could have something to do with, you know, your blood circulating in your leg. But they checked all that out and says, no, everything looks good there. So it kind of comes and goes where it feels like it's a little sting. And you know, I had to go to I had a hospital appointment the day before yesterday, and just the lady putting the machine on to check my blood pressure, you know how it squeezes it, that was hurting. I was like, oh my God, can you kind of lighten that up? And she says, well, let me do it on the other side. She goes to do it on the other side, and I'm like, what in the world is going on today? Even that was hurting. You know, there's days where it feels like my shirt weighs 100 pounds. My skin is like, hey, I'm trying to hold this thing up, and it's like, I mean, how can your shirt weigh 100 pounds? But that's what my skin believes it
That's
is. You know, it's like, wow.
Yeah, that's what I've witnessed. It's, you know, I'm outside, and it's, you know, I'm I mean, I'm not in much pain or anything, but because of the CFS and all that, it just feels like my body, instead of weighing, you know, at 183, it's like all of a sudden it feels like somebody just put a good 80 pounds on your back, and it's like, what the heck is going on? You know,
Like
like
gravity
somebody
is
just
free.
drained the energy right out of you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I mean, and to people who don't know about it or don't understand, they go, man, what's wrong with you? Did you sleep well? They want to know if you slept well. And, no, that's not the problem. I mean, there's some day when I used to, when I was working, there was one day, I got up to go to work and I had to be there at 5:30 and I get there at 5:30. I tried to start setting things up and literally by 7 o'clock, I was, telling the boss, look, man, I can't make it. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I got to get home. And I couldn't even drive. He had somebody else. I left my car there. And he had somebody else drive me home. And I was just laying up on the couch like, Jesus, what is going on? I mean, I was only there 2 hours, but it felt like I had been there 6 days, not a couple hours, but a couple days without rest. Are you sleeping okay? That's what they ask you. Yeah, I'm sleeping fine. I mean, I get at least, 6 or 7 hours, but it's not sleeping. It's just fatigue. You just feel like you've been working for so long or doing something for so long, and in all actuality, you either just had started or hadn't done anything yet. So, I mean, how do you tell your kids when they come up and go, "Hey, I want to go outside and kick the soccer ball," and you go, "Yeah, let's go," and you step outside the door, and after 5 minutes, you're like, "Oh my God, what is going on?" And he's like, "You just came out here," and I'm like, "We were trying to fly kites." How do you get tired from flying a kite?
That's yeah. I had a friend of mine that the best way he described it, uh, uh, and I liked his description of it. It was kind of like the best way to describe it. It's kind of like here you are, you're all energized, ready to go. Not much problem, and it's kind of like somebody took a Slurpee straw right down the middle of your spine, just went and suck that energy right out of you just that quick.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it. It's back when I was living with my father and them for a while because they were trying to help us out. My sister used to be like, "Man, I don't know what you have, but I hope I never get it." It's just one of those things where I was Mr. Go Lucky. I was always running around doing something. I loved playing sports, or I was always doing something. I was a huge softball fanatic. I could play softball in tournaments on the weekends and just play double headers or just games through the weekdays. Loved it, but I couldn't even bend over to pick up a ball now. I could barely get through one game. So it's not something that I think that people can fake. Let's just put it that way. It's just, I mean, just look in the eyes, man. I mean, you can see the weariness, the not understanding, the question marks. Can I get help or something? But
Now, have you noticed one thing? I've spoken with a couple veterans, and one of the things that I have seen, and once I replay this video back, I don't realize it. Like, for example, I guess what I'm trying to say is, to me right now, as I'm speaking with you, I think I'm talking normally, that no problems, blah, blah, yada, yada. But then when I go back and I look at the audience, like, wow, man, what the heck? You sound like, if you ever look at that cartoon years ago with the chicken buzzer, singing "Bring Me Home a Little Bumblebee."
I'm about frog or leghorn.
Yeah, that's it. That's the impression I get, And I look at the videos of me in the past. It's like I've noticed a speech pattern change. I've
Yes.
definitely noticed that. And when I look at other videos, like I've seen many, many hours of testimonies and hearings from other Gulf War veterans up in Washington, D.C. And when I replay them back and I compare them, it's almost like I can see a vocal fingerprint between all the other veterans. Now, some of us have it really bad, other ones barely, and other ones there's a lot where we don't have a problem except when when we start to get like loopy headed, you know, kind of the cognition's kind of going downhill, then you can start to see these things. But have you
Right.
ever noticed that?
Yeah, mine's is like like the doctor said when I went for my eval. He said you can tell by your facial expressions. And to me, like you said, I had no idea anything was different. I thought I was being the same way I was from when I came in. But like he said, when you first came in, you were very observant, very bright, smiley, answering the questions quick. And then as it goes on, you know, you could see your eyes weren't staying open as wide as they were. Your speech is tending to slow down. Your motion that you have is not, you know, you were really, you know, with your hands, and now they're kind of to the side, and you know, and he says you can definitely tell. Just you wouldn't even have to say you were starting to wear down. You can look at it and see, you know, that you are starting to wear down. And he says physically that shows on you. You know, and I can understand that because people have told me before, do you need to take a rest, or you need to take a break, or are you okay? You know, I could be having a conversation with somebody and just be talking, and they go, hey, your right eye is starting to lower. Is it okay? Are you okay? And I go, oh yeah, I'm just winding down. That's what I tell everybody. I'm not gonna say I'm tired. I'm just going, yeah, I'm just winding down. You know, normally when my right eye starts dropping, that's the hint that yeah, it's about that time. So
That's interesting you mentioned that, because I remember, you know, at times where, you know, when I'm starting to drain out and I don't say anything about it. I didn't say, you know, I didn't go to my daughter or anybody and say, oh man, I'm starting to get sleepy, I'm starting to get loopy or whatever. They can actually look at me and say, you know, I've had her where she looked at me and said, Dad, go take a nap.
you know, something else I thought was weird when we left theater, you know, before we can even get back on the plane to leave, we had to turn in our shot records. And I have never seen them since. When I requested my file, they were not in there.
Yeah, I had the same thing too. The shot records I had once I PCS'd and all that, they were not the same shot records that I had when we went through theater. You know, when we deployed. Um, you know, there were a lot of things that were transferred over, but there was a lot of things, and they weren't. They were. It was like they transferred some of the information over and said, "Okay, here's your new shot records," but then the old ones, uh, they disappeared.
Right, right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Because mine was totally gone, and I'm thinking, well, you know, I heard a lot of other people saying, well, you know, try to get a copy of your shot records, and when mines weren't in there, I had to pay a company to go down to St. Louis, and they made copies of absolutely everything that was in my file. It
Hmm.
was in there. I'm like, so you know, no shot records or nothing. It was like we took a copy of we made a copy of everything that was in there, and I think I paid what $50 or $60 to have them, you know, do that, and there was
Yeah.
nothing there. I'm like, man, this is, you know, I see other people saying, well, look to see if you got this and look to see if you got that. I have nothing to compare it to because I have nothing.
No. Um, I think we pretty much covered everything. Uh, is anything you can think of offhand? You have to forgive me. I'm kind of getting, yeah, I'm getting to the point that it's like, okay.
Your words are breaking up. I recognize that for myself, so you're okay. You're okay.
Okay. But anything else you can think of?
No, I'm just hoping that, you know, one day we get answers and, you know, all of us can get healthy again. That's that's
Yeah,
uh, that's pretty much
that's
it.
and that's the only thing we want is, you know, we're at a point now when it comes to Gulf War veterans, you know, we're going through this. It's every day. This is every day, every single moment, every single second of the day. It's pure torture. The only thing that ever changes is the intensity level, and the only thing we want from the VA is, we want them to move forward and try to in the research and try to find ways. At this point, I have very little hope for a cure, but I'm hoping that they can come up with better alternatives to give us a better quality of life. That's what we're looking for, is the quality of life.
Yeah, I second that. If some answers would help out, as far as civilian doctors go, they can only go so far. The doctor that I had told me best, it's like a needle in a haystack. Until we know if you were exposed to anything or what you might have taken, then how can we provide a treatment? It's like trying to solve a math equation without the equation. I mean, trying to solve a math problem without the problem. You got to know the problem in order to try to find the solution. If the problem's being withheld from you, then anything that you try is just a guess.
Okay. All right, Aaron. Out here for the day. I'll give you a call back as soon as I stop the broadcast. But anyway, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm a firm believer that these videos, these interviews, they're going to expose the matter. They are going to educate the general public, and they're going to expose the matter, and hopefully we can get a push to reform the VA to move forward and step up to the plate and help us. That's the main thing.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you, Glenn, for putting this out there and giving me the opportunity to share my story with you and all the other fellow Gulf War veterans or any veterans that's out there that's watching this. Thank you for all that you do, and hopefully, this will help out.
Roger that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You have a good day.
All right, you too.